The memory of the last drop still lingers in my mind like a scar. It's a feeling I've grown accustomed to. The sensation of being submerged, of being weighed down by the very thing that's supposed to keep me afloat. Water, they call it, the essence of life. But for me, it's a constant reminder of what I've lost, of what I'll never have again. I'm not sure how it started, but I think it was the day my father took me to the river for the first time. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, it was always with a sense of authority, of wisdom. He showed me how to catch fish, how to navigate the currents, and how to respect the power of the water. I was a boy then, full of wonder and curiosity. I'd spend hours listening to his stories, watching the way the light danced on the ripples. But as the years went by, I began to realize that my father's love for the water was not just a simple affection. It was a necessity, a survival instinct that drove him to the edge of sanity. I remember the day he disappeared like it was yesterday. We were on a fishing trip. Just the two of us, and the sun was setting over the horizon. He stood up, his eyes fixed on something in the distance, and said, "I have to go." I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head and walked away. I followed him, of course, but he was already gone, vanished into the mist that rose from the water like a specter. I searched for him, called out his name, but there was only silence. And then the rain started. It came down like a deluge, washing away everything in its path. I was swept up in the current, carried away from the only life I'd ever known. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, my body wrapped in bandages, my mind foggy with medication. The doctor told me I'd been rescued by a group of fishermen, that I'd been lucky to escape the floodwaters. But I knew the truth. I knew that my father was gone, that he'd been taken by the water, consumed by its power, and I knew that I'd never be the same again. As I grew older, the memories of that, they began to fade, but the feeling of being weighed down by the water remained. I tried to shake it off, to distress self with work or relationships or hobbies. But it was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. I'd have nightmares, dreams of drowning, of being trapped in a world that was constantly shifting and flowing. And when I woke up, I'd feel a sense of dread, of anxiety that I couldn't shake. I tried to fill the void with substance, with booze and pills and women. I thought that if I could just find the right combination, the perfect balance, I could numb the pain, silence the voices in my head. But it never worked. The water always came back, like a specter, like a ghost. And I'd be left with the same feeling, the same sense of being lost and alone. I started to withdraw from the world, to isolate myself from the people and places that I loved. I'd move from one place to another, always looking for a new start, a new chance to leave the past behind. But the water was always there, waiting for me like a patient lover. And I knew that no matter where I went, no matter what I did, I'd never be able to escape its pull. Years went by, and I became a shadow of my former self. I was a man consumed by his own demons, haunted by the memories of what he'd lost. But then something changed. I met a woman who saw beyond the surface, who saw the real me, the me that I've been trying to hide for so long. She was a river herself, flowing with a beauty and a power that I'd never seen before. And I knew that I had to have her, to hold on to her like a lifeline. We met in a small cafe, surrounded by the sounds of the city. She was sitting at a table by the window, her eyes fixed on the water outside. I was drawn to her like a magnet, like a fish to a hook. I sat down across from her, trying to play it cool, but she saw right through me. She knew that I was broken, that I was still trying to find my way. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. She listened to me, really listened, like she was trying to understand the language that I spoke. And I found myself opening up to her, telling her things that I'd never told anyone before. She was a safe haven, a refuge from the storm that had been raging inside me for so long. As the sun began to set, she asked me to take her to the river. I hesitated at first, unsure if I was ready to face the water again. But she took my hand, and I knew that I had no choice. We walked to the river side by side, our footsteps quiet on the pavement. And when we reached the water's edge, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. It was like I was home, like I was finally where I was meant to be. She took my hand, and we stood there, watching the water flow by. It was a beautiful moment, one that I'll never forget. And in that instant, I knew that I was ready to face the past, to confront the demons that had been haunting me for so long. I was ready to let go, to release the weight of the water and start anew. We spent the rest of the summer together, exploring the city, holding hands, and talking about our dreams. She was a free spirit, a woman who lived in the moment, and I was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. I felt alive again, like I was finally living, not just existing. But as the days went by, I began to realize that I was still carrying the weight of the water. I'd have flashbacks, moments of panic and anxiety. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my heart racing, my body drenched in sweat, and I knew that I had to face it, to confront the demons that had been haunting me for so long. I started to see a therapist, a woman who specialized in trauma and PTSD. She was kind and compassionate, with a gentle touch and a listening ear, and I found myself opening up to her, telling her things that I'd never told anyone before. She helped me to understand my past, to make sense of the memories that had been haunting me for so long. As the weeks went by, I began to feel a sense of peace, a sense of calm that I'd never known before. I was still carrying the weight of the water, but it was no longer suffocating me. I was learning to live with it, to find a way to navigate the currents and the undertows. But just as I was starting to feel like I was getting better, something happened. A tragedy struck, a loss that shook me to my core. My mother, the woman who had always been there for me, the woman who had always been my rock, passed away. I was devastated, consumed by grief and pain. I didn't know how to deal with it, how to process the loss. I felt like I was drowning, like I was being swept away by the currents of my own emotions. And I knew that I had to face it, to confront the pain and the sadness that had been building up inside me for so long. I went back to the river, to the place where it all started. I stood at the water's edge, feeling the wind in my hair, the sun on my face, and I let it all out. The grief and the pain, the anger and the sadness. I cried like a child, like a man who had lost everything. And as I stood there, feeling the weight of the water, I knew that I was ready to let go. I was ready to release the past, to move on from the pain and the sadness. I was ready to find a new sense of purpose, a new sense of meaning. I started to rebuild my life, to find a new sense of normalcy. I started to see my friends and family again, to reconnect with the people who had always been there for me. I started to find new hobbies, new interests, and new passions. And I started to feel alive again, like I was finally living, not just existing. But as I look back on the past, I realized that I had been given a gift. I had been given the chance to confront my demons, to face the pain and the sadness that had been haunting me for so long. And I had been given the chance to let go, to release the weight of the water and start anew. I realized that the water was not just a symbol of my pain, but also of my strength. It was a reminder of the power of the human spirit, of the ability to overcome even the darkest of circumstances. And I knew that I would always carry it with me, that it would always be in me. As I look back on my journey, I realize that I've come a long way. I've faced my demons, I've confronted my pain, and I've let go of the weight of the water. I'm still carrying it with me, still feeling its pull, but it's no longer suffocating me. I'm living, really living for the first time in my life. I found a new sense of purpose, a new sense of meaning. I found a new love, a new passion, and a new way of living. And I know that no matter what the future holds, I'll always be ready to face it, to confront it head on. I'll always be ready to let go, to release the past and start anew. The water is still there, still flowing by, still reminding me of the pain and the sadness that I've overcome. But it's no longer a weight, no longer a burden. It's a reminder of my strength, of my resilience, and of my ability to overcome even the darkest of circumstances. And I know that I'll always carry it with me, that it will always be a me.